just going to go through this really quick. Paul is a legit fighter. Now, we all know he was a boxer, right? But in terms of fighting and being a fighter, he was truly tested by Tyron Woodley, and he came out roses. So he is a legit fighter, okay? But um, why this relates to rest certain things is this. A lot of people, for some reason, think that boxing is not fighting. Like boxing is boxing and fighting is fighting. No, boxing is fighting. If you're going into combat and you're going to fight somebody, you're fighting. Now, how you proceed to fight may be many different ways. You may decide, I'm going to engage with this guy on my terms. I'm going to engage with this guy where I see beneficial to me. Okay? Or you may say, man, let's just get it on, and you just start trading. You know what I'm saying? Both are fighting. Okay? Both are fighting. Jake Paul, at first, in the first round, second round of the fight, he uh, he went at Tyron Woodley. Woodley used his defense, but then Woodley became the aggressor. And definitely in the latter half of the fight, Jake Paul was very tired. Used his jab to try to keep Tyron Woodley off of him to fight by points. And again, that is fighting. That is not. People must get this straight. That's a form of fighting. It's a strategy, but it's a form of fighting. Now, where it's not fighting is when a guy takes a jug and runs to one end of the ring to the next, literally running. That at that point in time, that fighter does not want to engage whatsoever. He's not fighting, running. However, if a fighter is facing another fighter face to face, he hasn't turned his back on the fighter and ran away. That is fighting. It is boxing. We call it when a guy is fighting from outside. Um, when a fighter is fighting at a distance from another fighter, where the other fighter cannot hit him, right, and he can or can't hit the other fighter, we call that outboxing. Outboxing because when both fighters can hit each other and they're within range, that is called the pocket. Okay, it's called the pocket. If you are outside of the pocket, and that's where you majorly uh, fight because you can hit your opponent because you have a longer reach and your opponent can't hit you, it's called outboxing because you're boxing outside of the pocket. Okay? Now, when you can hit your opponent and your opponent can hit you, you are inside of the pocket. Okay? And once you are inside of the pocket, that is known as in fighting. In fighting. Now, even though it's called fighting, in fighting, it's because there's a special sort of way you box in there. Okay? Now, there are two actual distances you can box inside the pocket. You can box where you have separated yourself from the other person, so you're a good distance away from each other, but you can hit the person can hit you. That is known as mid range. Mid range boxing. However, if you're body to body, you're physically touching the opponent is physically touching you, or you're very close to the opponent, that is known as in fighting. Infighting. Okay? So there's infighting, which is inside the pocket, but then there's infighting where you're body to body. So don't confuse the two. Now, why that's important for people to understand is because a lot of people, the common person, the casual person, always thinks of boxing as a war, as a guy's hitting one person and the other person's hitting the other person, and they're going toe to toe and they're hitting each other all the time. That's not boxing. The Rocky movies will give you that wrong impression. Hollywood will give you that wrong impression that it's some sort of tough man thing where guys take blows from each other until one falls. That's not boxing. Okay? The very low skilled fighters do that. Boxing is about hitting and not getting hit as much as possible. So you want to hit that guy as much as you can, but you don't want that guy to hit you as much as he can. Okay? Especially if he has a much more powerful punch than you do. Hence, in boxing, we have something called defense. Again, casuals and casual people think defense means you have to use your feet and run all around the ring and they call it running. No, defense is a simple thing like blocking punches. You block a punch, okay? You block a punch. Slipping punches. You throw a punch at me, I slip it. A deft movement just like that. Dipping under punches. Getting low and getting under punches. It may simply be your body's positioning, especially in infighting, where you're up close against your opponent, shoulder to shoulder. Okay? It may be a simple thing, such as throwing punches. You throw a lead right that counters a jab. You slipped and threw a lead right this way. Okay? You slipped and threw a lead right this way. Okay? And what happens is, because you threw the lead right, you prevented him from throwing his lead right. And you caught him. So defense can be offense. Defense can be the position in which your body is in space. I haven't even talked about your feet yet. You can pivot as a form of defense to get out of the way of punches and set up your punches. And so you have to understand in boxing that there are a lot of things or concrete things which are factual that make boxing what it is. Okay? As in any other martial art, it is a martial art. So you must understand that in boxing, there's no such thing. Well, there is such a thing as running. You can literally run in that ring and you can, try to get a jog and escape your opponent because you really do not want to engage. There are times when boxers or even fighters may not want to engage with their opponents, and they do all kinds of little tricks and strategies. I'll give you a couple. One of them is when a boxer does not want to engage with another boxer, he may hit him below the belt, a low blow, to buy himself time. Another strategy, of course, is simply not engaging. You turn your back to your opponent and you run. You're not supposed to turn your back to your opponent, but some guys do that. Other guys, they try to stall their opponent by throwing feints and throwing jabs, but they're not hitting their opponent. If you notice, a guy who does not want to engage, he literally does not hit his opponent at all, and he's just staying as far away from his opponent as possible. We saw it with Guillermo Rigondeaux and Nonito Donaire. Rigo wasn't even interested in countering. In boxing, you want to be able to counter, which means, if you're a counterpuncher particularly, which means you do not stay so far away that you can't counter. And you can know when a boxer does not want to engage with another when he's so far away from the other boxer that he can't counter him. You want to make them miss and you want to make them pay. Okay? So that's when you know a boxer doesn't want to engage. So it's not just, and once you see a boxer facing another boxer in the ring, that means they want to fight. It's a fight. However, if that boxer who's facing the other boxer is too far away from that boxer that he himself can't land punches on that boxer, he's not trying to engage. Okay? That's how you know. Because if you can hit that guy, but he can't hit you, then you can engage. You engage by hitting him, right? He just can't hit you back. That's totally different to when you're so far away that you can't even engage him. In which case, that is negative boxing. That is where that person is not trying to engage. It's not called running, but it is definitely an avoidance strategy to prevent your opponent from even trying to engage with you, which is a negative strategy. Okay? So I hope everybody's clear on that because I see certain boxers unfairly labeled, they're not fighters, they're boxers. That's stupid. Okay? Jake Paul is a fighter. He's not just a boxer. He's not just a pro boxer. He's a fighter. And he proved it. Okay? He took a very, very hard punch that knocked him into the ropes. Should have been called a knockdown, but it's okay. He got his bounce back. And he sucked it up He was very tired, and he fought through all of that. And it is fighting when you throw a jab. Okay? And even though his jab fell short and he threw some wild ass punches, he was fighting his ass off. Okay? Unless you've been in that square circle and unless you understand the fatigue that you have where your arms don't want to move because it's so fucking heavy, until you have gone through that situation, you will understand it is not just boxing, it is fighting. Okay? It is fighting. And in that ring, it's not a game. It's life or death. You can get killed in there. Okay? It's called a blood sport for a reason. And just because guys come out of the ring and they don't have a lot of damage on them doesn't mean it's not dangerous. It's just they know a lot of things to keep themselves protected. They have defense. I'm going to say it one more time. Defense is the difference between a fighter who leaves that ring in a stretcher or a fighter that leaves that ring with all his faculties and hardly touched, like Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley was the aggressor throughout the fight against Jake Paul, most of the fight, but he had very good defense. You see? And Jake Paul, he had decent defense himself. So you must understand that. Nobody goes into a fight without defense. You go to the fight without defense, you can get a broken jaw. You can get hospitalized because you have a hemorrhage in your brain because those punches slam your brain into your skull. Okay? Especially headshots. Very dangerous stuff. Guys can burst your eardrum. Guys can puncture your lungs with a punch, knock your ribs into your lungs and puncture your lungs. There's a lot of things that can happen. You can have a liver bleed. You can damage your spleen. You can internally damage, your organs inside of you if you're not perfectly conditioned and you're not blocking punches properly. Okay, this is a dangerous. They call it a sport, but it's really dangerous warfare. It's got rules, but it's a war. How you fight that war makes the difference. And I'm going to have to go to war very, very soon. That's why I'm telling you guys this. I'm not playing around, and boxing's not a game. I'm going to catch you guys later. I'm what you need. Peace.